Okay, start again.
Okay. Now, I'm sorry you've missed all the things, but what I was saying is it's something you can learn very, very quickly. We all think in pictures, in a nutshell, for those who weren't here before. In a nutshell, we all think in pictures. So painting pictures, visual learning is a lot more powerful when it's combined with physical touch learning as well. And your businesses will run better if you can create robots of yourselves, clones of yourselves, believing in the morals, the values, the operations, the skill set, etc. If you can create clones, then you have success. And Taimour and I were having this conversation. It's great finding stuff on the internet. It's great learning using tools like Google, etc. But when I say to you, go use that and put that thing into that software and tell me the measurements, tell me, etc., you can't do that from a book, and you can't do that thing. You need physical learning. And I said to Taimour, why don't we get them all here with us, everybody, and teach them over 5 days or 5 or 6 days how to run an operation, do your compliance, appoint the right people, get creditworthiness, show morality, show how skillful you are at recruiting the right people as well, and how to manage and recruit and clone those people, and show you how to do software. And he and I think we agree that would be the right thing to do. After all, you're going to pay, what, 300,000 or whatever for the support. And I think physical learning, being in a place, using the software, learning to talk to people, learning to understand how to do things technically, visually, and physically is more productive than searching it on the internet and reading it about books. If you agree with me, then Taimour will engage with you.
Sai, is it okay if I talk about Kevin's report in the last 24 hours? Yeah?
Sure.
So Bayo, this may answer your question about interviewing people and onboarding people, if I may. So I have a process in my company that unfortunately I don't deviate from the process. It's kind of like every time I've deviated from the process, it's always haunted me. So whenever somebody like Sai or anybody else says, Taimour, we have a platform, we have an issuer for SBLC, we have whatever, there's a process they have to go through with my company. If they don't like my company or they don't like my process, they can go somewhere else. So my process is that, and Sai will tell you, is that either my FBI person or my CIA person has to do a deep due diligence on the issuer provider letter. And then from there, they send the report to whoever who said, hey, I have a platform, but then they also have to send it to one of the law firms I use. And what I have found in my years of experiences, there's some things that my FBI person or CIA person may not catch, but the law firm will. The law firm that's a private placement platform has a lot of domain experience that they, like the two of them combined, is an unstoppable team, hands down. So yesterday, Sai came to me and said that he has an issuer, they'll issue a banking instrument at this price, they'll also monetize it at this price, that. So Sai sent me the contract, and sure enough, it went to our FBI person. Our FBI person worked over the night or evening or something like that, and sent 2 emails, like a 15 gig emails, giving us a background detail on the issuer, provider, monetizer, like that. And his big headline was, this is fraud. The guy who owns this contract has been in this courtroom on an SBLC. He's been ordered not to participate or sell instruments like that. So the big headline of today was fraud, fraud, fraud. And so typically, Bayo, this answers your question. What anybody would do is you walk away. Kind of like what I would do is walk away. I have 3 issuers that I trust my life with. Nothing goes wrong with them. Now, they may be late, but I can trust the guy who's going to issue an instrument, and he knows me and I know him. So like my life doesn't change. Sai said, I know the banking officer on the contract. I have seen the banking officer's name multiple times before Although your FBI guy said, no, I'm going to pick up the phone and call the bank officer. And I'm going to ask the bank officer, did you get into a contract with this guy? Is this your instrument? Let out. And so, Bayo, to answer your first question on how do you do this, my first answer is experience. You know what I mean? With me, I have all the tools and processes of, if Sai wants to work with me, he has to do a third-party assessment. He goes through a background check. Like I have the, I don't know what to call it, the castle, the jail, I have the process procedures all around me. But also my clients expect that. But what I find with people when working with people like Sai is they have some domain experience that perhaps my team doesn't have in a certain domain. So I don't know if Bill, that helps you, supports you like that, but that's what I have found for me on how I do onboarding is to work with experience. And then the other thing we do in our company is we do something called minimum viable test or minimum viable product. You may have heard that analogy. So if we're going to work with Sai, we'll say, hey, Sai, we'll work with you. Let's do one event. And let's see if you produce results. And if you do produce them, we'll do 5,000 more events. I'm just using Sai as an example, but that's the religion in my company. You know, when somebody bypass or somebody passes through everything, we then do a minimum viable test, minimum viable product to see if there's performance. Then we can count on this to produce. I hope that answers the question.
I just want to add, Taimour's right. Kevin did find a few issues with this document, but we know this. We know that brokers are in place and brokers don't always react. They make spelling mistakes, they make grammar mistakes, etc. They push out these stupid DOAs in contract. And I've said this many, many times, DOA is death on arrival, right? It is not used by banks. And Taimour were having this discussion, ATV, CIS, that's all the bank needs. And what has happened since I said to Taimour, I'm going to ring the bank officer and get a bank officer to confirm it, is I have received a SWIFT of the instrument that they're going to issue for the monetization and the instrument. So I'm going to check that tomorrow, but I won't physically check that. I'll get my colleague, Daniel Steen, the director of Deutsche Bank, the same bank this instrument has come from, and get him to check it. And if it's real, we all make money. It's the broken network that Kevin identified as being totally fraudulent, and maybe the producer. Now, the producer's genuine, but he's gone through a legal case. And I know many, many people who are honest have gone through legal cases because people didn't understand the transaction or it never materialized. So we'll get to the bottom of this, but I'm pretty certain this bank officer exists. We've dealt with him before, and I know the SWIFT code's right, the instrument's right. So tomorrow we'll either have an instrument provider. Well, we will have it because at the end of the day, we have a document here. A genuine SWIFT, which we can check out. So if you think there's something rubbish in it, you must always check it out. Don't believe what you hear, see, and do. And when we onboard you and when we train you, we're going to teach you how to identify all the fraud you're going to experience in your banking systems and your client bases as well. We're going to show you how to avoid getting into litigation with people who have lied to you, cheated to you, falsely represented their mortgage, their land, their property, their asset, their SKR, their SBLC. We're going to teach you how to get rid of that so you can keep a very, very clean pair of heels. And we can't do that doing this. You have to physically learn it and see it done. So I said to Taimour, let's get everybody booked on, get them to the UK, and we'll train them here. They can enjoy a nice environment and learn how to do this. That was what I was going to suggest to Taimour. He and I think maybe that might be the right thing. It will be a decision for everybody else to make that decision as well. After all, you are going to have a banking institution within the next 4 to 6 weeks, fully operational, and you're going to need to be able to run it. Brett did ask me a question because he said his lawyers said they couldn't run the financial institution in America without registering in America. Now, that's not quite true. His lawyers have got some of that right. Brett's responsibility, if he operates a bank in America, is to complete W-8 filings for each client. That means that the IRS, they will ask the client to fill out a W-8 filing saying, I have made this much money, so I want to pay tax. But a bank in America, if it's not doing central bank registration, it has to fill out a W-8. So every client that Brett brings to his bank, Brett will have the responsibility of filling a W-8 and informing IRS that he has this client and this is their tax position. That's the only limitation Brett has, so he can fully operate as originally discussed. So you can't learn that by Googling it.
That's true. That's true. Cool. Any other questions?
No, you can't.
Any other questions before we start?
Just to piggyback on that comment or that statement, no, I have not talked to an attorney. Does that apply to those of us in the US?
Sorry, about you sounded like you were had your head in a bucket of water. Then it just
Yeah, so sorry.
It sounded like a Dalek.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I was just saying that too, based on that comment that you made, I'm not running it through an attorney. So does that mean that the issue that Brett runs into is going to be what those of us in the US that has a bank going to run into, Roshana and myself?
No, we're going to show you how to manage this, because what you can do, you see, the software is like any software, right? The banking software has basic accounting software built into it anyway. So it records the person's transactions and you can pull up profit, loss, etc. for that client anyway. It's not a big deal. All you have to do is file it if you are required to file it, and only if you are required to file it. That is the only ask of the IRS. They may ask you, and if they do, all you do is print off the account statement, say this is it, this is a profit, this is the transaction history, here you are. And the client should be doing that honestly anyway. So if the client's lying to the IRS and you tell the truth, then yeah, no, you keep a clean pair of heels for future business. You know, the client, I mean, nobody wants to pay tax, right? This is why we have Delawares, this is why we have LLCs, this is why we have protective covenants, this is why we try and locate our assets in places where the Americans can't touch it. You know, this is the structure you have is the ideal global structure to do business. And the only thing you may be asked if you're in America is to file a W-8. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Are you there?
Yes, thank you, Sai.
Okay, that's fine. I am going to send everybody an email anyway about Lars and our transaction to get everybody updated, because you know he's been sick. I'm sending an email. You will all be CC'd in. Lars will not see that you have all been copied into the transaction, and we can discuss this in detail tomorrow. It's not been abandoned, it's still in process. We have another person offering exactly the same in America as well. So I'm just going to send everybody an email, keep it updated. Our target is still the end of the month.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Quick follow-up, Sai. So we're dealing with a few different jurisdictions for the full package, right? So I was just wondering, how is the training going to be focused towards the UK versus the rest?
No, we're going to show you how to manage the whole thing. You see, the location where you hold assets is where you're going to face the most regulation, and you're not going to hold the assets in America. You're going to hold the assets either in London, Sweden, or Netherlands, or New Zealand.
Right.
The only operating structure that's really American is the Delaware. And the Delaware is tax-free anyway, right? So that's going to be an entity. Now, most of these countries where you are registered, you have to have either a proxy director or a postal address,
Right.
of course. Now, in the UK, I will originate your postal address, and your co-director in this country will be me, or you can choose a proxy. So I put myself down at the moment. I have no shareholding. I have no control. You have all that. But I am here as a UK affiliate director, so you can register and operate your business in the UK. The same in Sweden, the same in New Zealand, and the same in Netherlands. So everywhere you go, you will have a postal address and a service person to allow you to operate in that country and use financial services in that country as well. In case you didn't know it, Sweden was the first country to have a central bank.
Right. Okay.
That's why we chose it. It's the cleanest and the best. Nobody ever hears of problems coming out of Sweden. Nobody ever.
So in terms of assets, let's say debt, right? Would there be a reason then to perhaps in contracts choose to have all those loans, in this case, issued, for example, in Sweden or in the UK, like essentially play with the jurisdiction, since you're saying it depends where you have your assets, right?
Sure. We have a back office. I think I may have sent you all details of the assets that we will fund, monetize, etc., etc. It's a back office. It's structured and it's there sitting behind to help you do business anywhere. If you can't do it in the country of your choice, it can do it in a country that we know well. And I know the government very well in that country as well. So it can do that. Now, we have somebody, our people, set up banking licenses in every country of the world. We know how it works and how to make it work. And we know the best place to put your assets. Now, you can put your assets anywhere once you create a trust deed with your client. So the client allows you to manage all their assets, and you can put them anywhere you like because they are giving you official charge of their assets. Much like accepting a property against a loan, you are then required to manage that asset on behalf of the client and give them the loan. And if you issue a trustee, you can do what you want with it. So we're going to show you how to do that. Most banks don't even know how to do it, to be honest, but we're going to show you how to do it.
That's good. Thanks.
Does it make sense?
Makes sense.
When are we planning the UK trip then?
Well, I was going to ask you when you'd like to come. I'd like to do it once you get your UK LLCs within the next 3 or 4 days. All are originated, all with your shareholding, all with details and registration details and corporate numbers. You should have them within the next 2 or 3 days. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Now, once they're there, then I'm going to say to you, look, when do you want to come and do this training? You're obviously going to have to pay for it because we have to pay for the resources here. We have to buy the software for you all, etc., etc. So all that has to be done. But you were going to pay Taimour. I don't know what you agreed. Obviously.
Yeah, sorry, it's not a Taimour. They're paying you and me.
Okay, so if they pay, if me and Taimour split that or whatever we decide to do, we'll originate that. But I will get dates for everybody and say, when can you do this? I will arrange the accommodation. I'll arrange the pickup from the airport. I'll arrange the hotel so you don't have to do any of that. I'll do it all here for you and say, I can do this on this day, this day, this day, this day. When would you like to come? And then we'll team you all together. Is that okay?
Yeah, for me,
that's fantastic.
I go to Asia on June 16th, and I'm not back until the end of July. So I would like to get that done before June 15th, if possible.
Okay, well, let's see what everybody else says. Let me get these UK LLCs in place. Let's see how many of you can arrange to come. Let me get you some dates within the next 48 hours. because as I say, I'll book the hotel, book the transport, I'll do everything. All you got to do is get on a plane and get here.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. But I personally believe this is the way forward. I don't think we can move as fast without physical interaction and putting your fingers on keyboards and, you know, scribbling things out. I don't think you can do it any other way.
So I do have a question, like when we come, if we have more than Bruce and I, we want to bring our, you know, 2 other people that's part of our team, is that okay? We just pay for those 2 people, or is it just the original people that?
Well, the fees that Taimour and I agree on are for the original people. If you want to bring additional people, then obviously there's accommodation, food, drink, food, or entertainment, etc. So I'll get you prices for those individuals if that's okay with you. Is that all right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sure. How many are you thinking about?
I'm thinking 2 more people.
Okay, 4. Well, that makes sense because that's probably how many people you're going to need to run your bank.
Right, and I thought it's better for them to be involved from the get-go than hearing from me.
Sure. No, I agree. Yeah.
I have a hard stop till 4. Can I start my piece? And then here's what I suggest. I'll then make Sai the host. You guys continue asking 5,000 questions from Sai. Will that work? Will that work?
Yes, that works.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Passing off, right? Yeah.
I do want to ask a question. Did you guys get the attachment for today's session from Sarah?
Yes, received.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got that this morning.
Okay, perfect, great. So today we're gonna, last week we covered mortgage-backed securities. Today we're gonna cover asset-backed securities. It's kind of like running on the same foundation as mortgage-backed securities with a few little minor twists to it. Asset-backed securities, when if you remember, I think we covered this in Dominican Republic, where the bank started with example Sai mentioned, which is let's put mortgages together, syndicate it, sell it off to a group of investors, get cash in, and then go get a 10x from the central bank. And once banks start to see how that works, somebody across the table said, hey, if that works with mortgages, can we do it with credit cards? Can we do it with receivables? Can we do it with equipment leases? Can we do it with student loans like that? And so out of that came ABS, asset-backed securities. Now, asset-backed securities is riskier than mortgages. You know, people are more likely to pay for their mortgage. But they may, if the economy goes sour and somebody has 10,000 equipments sitting out in a warehouse, they may say, hey, I can't afford to pay for the leases on this equipment anymore, so I'm going to bail out. Sorry, somebody's got an echo going on. I don't know who that is.
It's Brett. It's Brett. He's in his car.
Brett, with your permission, I'm going to put you on mute. And then if you need to go on mute, just like put your hand up or something, if that's okay. So the thing about asset-backed securities is it's the same concept of mortgage-backed securities, but it's a little bit riskier compared to mortgage-backed securities. But the difference is that with MBS, mortgage-backed securities, the underlying asset is always a mortgage. But asset-backed securities, the underlying asset is always, you know, what are the assets that's going in the structure. Now, the benefit to you or the investor is they get a fixed rate of return. This rate of return is usually higher than what they get on mortgages because they're taking a bigger risk. For you, when you're running a private bank, you probably have to think about what are all the different assets or different transactions that you're loaning money against. You're using the same structure for ABS. You're setting up a special purpose vehicle. You want to make sure the assets that you're putting into that special purpose vehicle produce something called cash flow, because as an investor, that's what I'm paying to get money for. You know, I need to make sure that this thing that I'm paying you money for produces some cash for me. And I understand it's riskier than compared to mortgage-backed securities. So what I'm going to expect from you is to make sure you pay me a high rate of return. So the benefit to you as somebody who's running a private bank is if you choose to get into ABS, this becomes a vehicle where you're constantly taking assets off your balance sheet and you're turning it into cash. So that's the benefit to you. If I'm an investor, the benefit to me is I'm getting a higher rate of return compared to alternative investment strategies, but also I'm getting I'm diversifying it. Now there's some risks. The first risk that I have is that Sai mentioned he had a little chart on default rates on commercial mortgages and different forms of different asset-backed securities, if you remember that. Sai has an upcoming book. He goes into detail in his book on the default risk on the different assets. And so one of the risks that it has is that the default risk is higher. Now with asset-backed securities, it also has additional risks that's outside of your control. If the economy goes bad, you got your asset-based portfolio, the risk becomes higher. If interest rates goes up, it could become something that I don't know if I'm that attractive to it. So those are some of the risks that investors and you face when you're putting that together. From an investor's perspective, when they want to put money into buying an asset-based security, generally speaking, what they're looking for is what's the credit risk of the portfolio they're buying? What's the payment priority? Are they going to get paid first or is somebody else going to get paid first? What's the cash flow? What's the underlying asset that they're giving you money for? And then they're going to look for your creditworthiness. What's the credit rating of your bank? You know, are you somebody who's, I'll use the integrity document I gave you. Do you have integrity? You know, like, do you pay out your creditors on time, like that? So ABS became a viable tool after mortgage-backed securities took off. ABS became really an opportunity for a lot of these banks to, you know, liquidate their assets and generate a lot of cash out of it. But with that, it also became some risks. So that's ABS in a nutshell. My first question, with that in mind, I want to open the floor and ask you for questions you have about ABS. Going once?
I can go with the
go ahead, please.
Question going back to experience with shipbuilding, essentially. So the banks normally would take a senior secured loan to offer the financing of building of the vessel. Is that a typical case where they would then turn around and securitize that essentially the loan backed with the vessel being built, or is that kind of a different case? Just to trying to orient myself from my own experience. Essentially, what kind of typical transactions do we see being relevant here? When would the bank turn around and say, okay, this is a good case for an asset-backed security, and we want to issue that and get investors in and get this off our balance sheet? This case being a senior secured loan.
They can break them up. That's the first thing. So anything that a bank wants to distribute, it generally pulls everything and sells it off. And it usually ends up coming back to the bank as a security somewhere along the line anyway. But very often they have syndicates that will buy specific items that are being disposed by banks. They don't guess and say, would you like this? They don't make 1,000 phone calls and say, would you like this? They already know who will buy that kind of security because they are categorized by risk, profile, term, and lend, and yield. And every buyer of that has a format saying, I will buy something with this yield, in this area, in this shape, in this term, and this, and it's already there. So it's sold as soon as they've gone. And you need that introduction. You'll get that introduction through networks of people that you deal with anyway. Because once people realize you're a bank, everybody's going to come and say, can we sell you something? And this is something they're going to come and sell you.
Right. Now that you say it, actually those loans were always syndicated when I think about it. Dealing with the lead, and then they had their typically 4 or 5 banks behind them, 3, 2.
You know why they have to do this? It's about risk profiling, right? The risk profiling is for one customer. If one customer has a 300 million loan from one bank, the bank worries, not the customer. Exactly. Right. So what the bank does is, I want to have 10 other friends to take part of this worry from me. So we'll split this among 10, and they syndicate it, and they all take asset. Now, the only time this is relevant, and I'm going to teach you about this, is in the event of insolvency. Because you can't have 10 people fighting for the same asset. So when you do this, you have to create priority creditors, because if you don't, you will never, ever, ever dispose of the syndicated loan. So you have to do that. And you have to be deciding that in contracts, legal contracts. So if you get 10 people, syndicate, saying, we're all going to lend you this, and we're going to have priority creditor engagement, then you need to get your lawyers onto that and make sure they decide who gets priority themselves. That's how it's done.
Kind of like the tranching with bonds. Would you offer with different risk profiles? Is it kind of the same thinking? Lead bank.
Yeah, but bonds. I mean, if you know what bonds and securities are a different thing. People confuse it. Bonds are debts created by banks, and people buy them to help the company survive. Securities are loans that have already been granted and given out and pulled to sell off to other investors. So that is a bank's business. It's not lending money. Lending money is a byproduct. Banks are dealers in securities. That's what they do, buy and sell securities. So once they define what that is, what bond is, what yield, what exposure is, how many are issued, how many are traded on a daily basis, how much it fluctuates between 1 and 3 days, because they always take a 3-day average. Once you know all those things, then you know who's going to buy that thing. Your stockbroker will probably be able to sell it for you anyway, because your stockbroker will be on a stock exchange where there's 18 million, or in England, there's 18 million buyers of a certain share, just one certain share. So, every stock exchange has that, and they all know how to do it. The stock exchange has the biggest database of buyers and sellers in every country, because they do the settlement.
Sure. Makes sense. Sounds good.
Okay, cool.
Brett, Bill? Any
Nope,
questions?
no question.
Brett,
No questions.
Brett, any questions for you? Sorry, Brett, I apologize. I know you're on mute. Give me 1 second. Let me find you. I am on. Shoot, I don't know how to unmute you. Brett, I need you to unmute yourself. Sorry. Okay, if you have a question, why don't you want to unmute yourself? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, I'm assuming he doesn't have questions. Okay, so
Taimour, can I do a circle back to me? So I understand this in concept, but once we have our bank, I'm assuming that the system or the computer is going to help us make those decisions, right? Or
yeah,
yeah, okay.
Yeah, because what you do, Bao, if you say, I only want to attract Asian women as my customers between the age of 25 and 35, who only want to borrow 100,000 and only want to pay 3% interest, and want to do that over a 4-year term you can program that into your software. So every woman that comes in, your officer, you or anybody taps in their details, and it won't let you pass those details, or it'll say this customer does not apply for this loan because they don't meet your lending criteria of this specific organization. That's all editable and definable by the directors and owners of the bank.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, you can't cheat the parameters. If you bought on Amazon, you can't cheat Amazon until you, yeah, because it'll only allow you to do certain things. It'll only allow to buy things in a certain way, deliver to a certain thing, but blah blah blah, and you have to get permission for it to change. So it's a similar thing. It's like buying anything online. You can decide.
Okay.
Is that okay?
I don't know why you would say if that's okay, if that's the way it is.
Well, I want them to know.
No, it's not
tell
okay.
me
It's
if
not okay. It's not okay.
Okay. Okay. Shall we run through it again? Because
Okay, I'm gonna go over the questions. Sorry, I'm gonna go over the homework. Can I do that?
Yes.
So the homework assignment for this week is for you to read and understand the material, the handout that we wrote very carefully for you on asset-backed securities. And then we want you to identify, especially with ABS and some of, not ABS, SPV and what's happening in the banking system, you will find a lot of material on ABS transactions, issuance, like that in the news. Our ask of you is to do some research so you get to see some real life case studies for yourself on how ABS is in the news. This is like, this like you have, I'm going to say this the wrong way, and I apologize for saying it the wrong way. You're earning the right to be a CEO of a bank. Does that make sense? You're earning the right to be a CEO of your own bank. So it's research for yourself, identify some new news articles around ABSD structures. And I promise you, you won't be shy of materials. I have, in addition to that, given you some YouTube, there's some videos, there's some awesome videos on YouTube that talks about ABS transaction structures, cash flow modeling, and so on. I want to invite you to watch those videos. They're not 10-hour longs or something like that. I'd like to say they're somewhat short, especially compared to my YouTube videos, they're somewhat short, but they're good content. I want you to read that, and with all of your understanding for yourself, write a summary of the key concepts in these videos and how you think or your understanding of how ABS structures works. And then next week, when we get to, or not next week, the week after when we get back together, I want you to be able to talk about what you learn on what are the risks and advantages from your perspective, on a credit rating, deal structures, underlying assets like that for you and your bank. Any questions about the homework assignment?
No.
Brett, if you have any questions, I need you to unmute. Nikolai?
Were there some specific links in there or just free search?
I just gave you the title. If you just Google, if you go on YouTube and just copy and paste the title, you'll find a video. There's not like 10,000 of them or something like that.
Perfect.
Is that cool? Good.
I don't have a question on this homework, but on the last meeting's homework, can we get access to the video and the homework assignment since I wasn't able to make it?
100%. I thought Sarah sent it out. If not, I'll personally send it out to you. The video. Unfortunately, Sarah's on vacation this week. So is it okay if, Brett, I send it to you on Monday?
Yep, that's fine.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. I'm going to stop the recording here.